Hello to all our magical listeners. We are Marie and Kate. Together, we love to chat about mindful magic. Mindful magic is intentionally, mindfully traveling through each day, each task, every little mundane thing you need to do with a magical mindset. Let's get magical and start this episode.
But Halloween, we can go back into Halloween traditions and symbols. Halloween in the US. So modern Halloween originates from Samhain. So the term Halloween comes from All Hallows Eve, the night before All Saints Day. Americans celebrate with trick-or-treating, carving pumpkins, haunted houses, corn mazes, and that tradition began in the 1930s during the Great Depression.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of like carving pumpkins, you get the jack-o'-lanterns, which I mean, oh my God, who doesn't love pumpkins? There's just so much you can do, people in carving them, they save the seeds and you can season and roast them. And, it's just, the smell of them and the whole, I love everything about a pumpkin down to the color orange. Carving jack-o'-lanterns, actually, this tradition was brought by Irish immigrants in the 1800s. So originally turnips were carved out to ward off evil spirits, but pumpkins became more common in the US. And let's face it, it's a little easier to carve a hollowed out pumpkin than a turnip.
Right.
But today we carve spooky faces into pumpkins, keeping the protective carved to ward off the evil spirits. But it's like now that we have pumpkins, we can actually stick a candle in and light them up. And it's just way more fun, I think.
I know one year the kids, we all got pumpkins. We're like, we're all going to carve them. We're going to have a blast. So my husband was working and I'm like, it's okay, guys. We're going to do this. We're going to have a blast. So they drew on the pumpkin what they wanted to cut out. And right when I cut off the top of all of them, they're like, nope, Mom, we're done. And I had to take the guts out of all. And I mean, there was 4 pumpkins total. And were frozen. And so now we only carve one and the rest of the kids paint.
So much less messy, right? So the tradition of carving the jack-o'-lanterns originated in Ireland using turnip. It's allegedly based on a legend about a man named Stingy Jack, who repeatedly trapped the devil and only let him go on the condition that Jack would never go to hell. But when Jack died, he learned that heaven didn't want his soul either. So he was forced to wander the earth as a ghost for eternity. And the devil, how sweet, gave Jack a burning lump of coal in a carved out turnip to help light his way. So locals eventually began carving scary faces into their own turnips to frighten away evil spirits. In the 1800s, when I guess Irish immigrants came over, they brought that tradition, but then pumpkins were just more common, I guess, in the US. So that's where we have our pumpkin carving now.
Well, that's so interesting. It reminds me of talking about the farmers. It's like those were their farmer stories.
Yeah.
It's the stories that pass down, and then their the superstition is so different. Another Halloween tradition that my favorite. So trick-or-treating is one of my favorite parts of Halloween because I have 4 kids and 3 of them still trick-or-treat. When I was a kid, my mom took us every year, and my mom's really tiny. She's like 4'11". So she'd dress up every year and we were not allowed to call her mom. She's like, no, I'm going trick-or-treating. And she went every year with us until we didn't want to go anymore. So it's just always been really big in my family. We always went. Trick-or-treating originated from Samhain, which was celebrated obviously October 31st in Europe. The first trick-or-treaters were poor children who would go door to door begging for food and money. There is some debate around the origins of trick-or-treating, but generally there are 3 theories. So the first theory suggests that during Samhain, the Celts would leave out food to appease the spirits traveling the earth at night. Over time, people began to dress as these unearthly beings in exchange for similar offerings of food and drink. The second theory speculates that the candy boom stems from the Scottish practice of guising. During the Middle Ages, generally children and poor adults would collect food and money from local homes in return for prayers of the dead on All Souls' Day. Geisers dropped the prayers in favor of non-religious practices with the inclusion of songs, jokes, and other tricks. And the third theory argues that modern American trick-or-treating stems from Belsnickling. That's such a funny word. Belsnickling. It's a German American Christmas tradition where children would dress in costume and then call on their neighbors to see if the adults could guess the identities of the disguised. In one version of the practice, the children were rewarded with food or other treats if no one could identify them. So that's really interesting. I don't know I would say I'd lean more towards the Irish
I
theory.
think so too. Yeah. Although they're so interesting, and there may be truth to a little bit
Yeah,
of all of them, you know?
that's true. All Saints' Day is celebrated on November 1st to remember saints and martyrs during the Christian history. And it is followed by All Souls' Day on November 2nd to commemorate those who have passed within the faith. I know we mentioned All Saints' Day earlier, so I want to make sure that everyone, if you don't know what All Saints' Day is. Another symbol of Halloween is black cats. So the idea of being spooked by black cats, so this dates back to the Middle Ages. So this is when black cats were considered a symbol of the devil, which I can't even picture. They're just so sweet. It didn't help that centuries later, accused witches were often found to have cats, particularly black ones. So people began to believe that the cats were a witch's familiar, supernatural entities that would assist in their practice of dark magic. So, and black cats and spookiness have been linked ever since.
So we can talk about seeing ghosts a little bit. You know, the Festival of Samhain marked the tradition to the new year at the end of the harvest and beginning of the winter. Celtic people believe that during the festival, spirits walk the earth. Later on, Christian missionaries introduced All Souls Day on November 2nd, of course, which perpetuated the idea of the living coming into contact with the dead around the same time of year. You can see different sects, different areas of the world, you know, kind of coming together around this time of year, all kind of having a little bit of the same tendencies, right? That the veil gets thinner.
Like no one can dispute that because they celebrate it, whether, different ways. So another symbol of Halloween is black and orange. So the traditional Halloween colors of black and orange also traces back to Samhain. For the Celts, black represented the death of summer, while the orange symbolized the autumn harvest season. So I want to go over quickly the magic of these colors. So the magical meaning of black that you would use for spells or rituals or color magic: safety, protection, and to banish negativity. And orange is for creativity, justice or balance, legal matters, joy, ambition, opportunity, and for celebration. So you can see just by their meanings and how perfect they are for this time of year. And I also want to recommend, while we're on the topic of colors, I felt like I really wanted to add this book in that I just read recently. During my Edgar Cayce studies, I love Edgar Cayce, which could be a whole other podcast episode and maybe will be in the future. But if you're interested in learning about the power of colors, I recommend Edgar Cayce on the Power of Color, Stones, and Crystals by Dan Campbell. And that book teaches you the power of these elements and colors and how they can change your life.
Oh yeah. I'm sure we will do an episode on Edgar Cayce. I read my first Edgar Cayce book when I was maybe 13 and just fascinated. So you will save that for another episode for sure. So another tradition for this time of year is bobbing for apples. You know, I don't know if people do this so much anymore because, you know, if you think about it, when you've got apples in a barrel of water and people are putting their open mouths with their saliva, you know, and mixing that all up, it's a little gross, actually. I mean, I've done it a few times, you know, it's just at like kids' parties and stuff when we were little, but nobody thought about that kind of stuff back then. But yeah, a little gross. So the game of bobbing for apples has kind of been a staple at Halloween parties for many years, not maybe so much now, but, you know, before. And its origins are more rooted in love and romance. I bet you didn't know that.
Oh, I did it.
The game traces back to a courting ritual that was part of a Roman festival honoring Pomona, the goddess of agriculture and abundance, and again at this harvest time of year, right? While multiple versions existed, the gist was that the young men and women would be able to predict their future relationships based on this game. When the Romans conquered the British Isles in 43 AD, the Pomona festival blended with the similarly timed Samhain, of course, Halloween. You know, bobbing for apples, I sucked at this until I figured out that you have to pin the apple against the side of the tub and then you can bite it because you can't really bite an apple while it's moving around in the water.
I never knew about the origins of bobbing for apples.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it interesting?
Another Halloween tradition is pranking, which is one of my favorites. I love anything that's funny and, I just love comedy, but pranking, I think is just hilarious. I love watching pranking videos. Playing pranks often varies by region, but the pre-Halloween tradition known as Devil's Night is credited to a different origin depending on the source. Some say that pranks started as part of May Day celebrations, but Samhain and eventually All Souls Day also included mischief. When Irish and Scottish immigrants came to America, they brought with them the tradition of celebrating Mischief Night as part of Halloween. And I am so glad you wrote down Devil's Night because I thought this was crazy. So when Danny was overseas in the army, he mentioned Devil's Night and no one knew what he was talking about. No one. All the soldiers with him. Only one who was Midwestern. So you actually wrote down Devil's Night in our notes. And I'm like, wow. So we're not the only ones that know about Devil's Night. So I wanted to mention that. I didn't know if it was just a Midwest thing. I guess it's not. But it always reminds me of The Crow. So when I first mentioned pranks, I didn't mean those types of pranks. I meant funny.
Yeah, so ones that don't harm people and that are just good-natured ones. We do no harm, of course. Another symbol of this time of year is bats. You start to see bats in all of the Halloween decorations that seem to come out in midsummer these days, right? Months and months ahead of time. But bats were likely present at the earliest celebrations, not just symbolically, but literally. As part of Samhain, the Celts lit their large bonfires that we talked about earlier, which attracted bugs, which in turn attracted bats. So yum for the bats. And, I'm sure you can just imagine this, bonfire with sparkly embers going up in the air and all the moths and bugs coming over and the bats just diving and, swirling all around. Spotting bats became connected with the festival. So the medieval folklore expanded upon the eeriness of bats with a number of superstitions built around the belief that bats were harbingers of death. And they're not, right? I mean,
they're adorable.
Well, not to us anyway. I love bats. They're one of my favorite stained glass things to make. They're just so nobody doesn't recognize a bat.
Right. My husband and I want to make bat boxes really bad when we have enough property. But the bat boxes are really cool too. My friends made some up in northern Michigan. They made boxes, and I thought that was really cool. And then the next Halloween tradition is devouring candy. That is like every tradition. Everyone partakes in that one. So this is a special part to me, obviously, because I have 3 small children and the trick-or-treating has always been really big in my family. This year, before we devour candy, my daughter and I are going to be witches together. She wants to be Glinda, I believe, the good witch. And I don't know what witch I'm going to be yet, but we want to be witches together. I'm not sure what my boys are going to be yet. Anyways, so the act of going door to door for handouts has long been a part of the Halloween traditions. But until the mid 20th century, the treats children received were not necessarily candy. Things like fruit, nuts, coins, and toys were just as likely to be given out. Trick-or-treating rose in popularity in the 1950s, and it inspired candy companies to market small, individually wrapped candies. People began to favor them out of convenience, but candy did not dominate all the other treats until the 70s when parents started fearing anything unwrapped.
Oh, right. Of course, infamous razor blade and the apples and whatnot, right?
Terrifying.
I know. People can be so horrible. So, one of the candies is candy corn, of course. That's such a favorite around this time of year. So, a candy maker at the Wonderly Candy Company in Philadelphia is sometimes credited with the inventing of candy corn in the 1880s, the tri-colored candy that we all know and love. But candy corn didn't become a widespread sensation until the Golitz Company, which is now the Jelly Belly Company, and I hope I'm saying that right, brought the candy to the masses in 1898. Candy corn was originally called chicken feed, and it sold in boxes with the slogan, "Something worth crowing for." Initially, it was just an autumnal candy because of the corn's association with the harvest time. Candy corn later became Halloween specific when trick-or-treating grew in popularity sometime in the 1950s. Jelly Belly still uses the original recipe. And I have to admit, at this very moment, I do have a mason jar of candy corn on my counter. I love the way it looks in the glass. And, it's just got those beautiful traditional colors. And of course, how accessible it is to grab some here and there.
Love candy corn too. My son thinks I'm crazy, but I love candy corn.
How do you eat candy corn? Do you just pop the whole thing in your mouth, or do you bite each individual color?
So I used to bite each individual color, but now I just pop them in my mouth. I'm more worried about my teeth.
So I mentioned the Samhain graveside ritual earlier, so I'm going to just go over that quickly now. So some of the supplies you'll need is some salt, some incense, a black or blue candle, and some blessed water. And this can be blessed by the full moon or infused with the powers of herbs or crystals or holy water. I love my holy water. We have a friend here within our St. Andrew's Society of Hawaii who's a priest at our Catholic church here, and he blesses it for me. So I just feel so special having that. And of course, a pentacle. So with this ritual, you stand in front of their grave and center yourself with 3 deep cleansing breaths. Then say, Hecate, goddess of night, magic, mother of the dead, hear my plea. Pass on my message of love to those you have taken from me. Let the elements dance around the body of them buried in this ground. Then sprinkle salt around the grave, saying, Earth, for the ground in which they rest, that once ran beneath their feet, I beseech thee. Then light your incense and walk around the grave with it, saying, Air, for the time we spent breathing in the same and the wisdom they passed on to me, I beseech thee. Then light your candle and walk around the grave, saying, Fire, for the passion and love that burned within their heart, and for the warmth they brought into my life that I will never forget, I beseech thee. Then sprinkle your water around the grave, saying, Water, for the many tears I have shed, each a memory I'll never forget, I beseech thee. So you're sharing each element and drawing in, and Kate, you can help me with this a little bit because you might be able to explain it better, but drawing in the intention and the magic of each of the elements. It just makes your honoring that much stronger.
Right. And I do feel that it helps you really ground yourself to be more open to the connection, feeling connected with all the elements.
And these are just some words that I say, as long as it's all in your intention, right? It's just being there and remembering them. So after you do that, or whatever little ritual you want to do, it's a good time to share remembrances, give thanks, and things you wish you may have said. They will hear you, and it's a good time to empty your heart and clear out anything you're holding on to. And catch your loved one up on your life. This is, again, I keep saying this over and over, they're still here. They want you to talk to them. Right. And also, it's okay to cry. It's okay. It's our grief is natural. Once you're ready to say goodbye again, hold your pentacle to the sky or put it on the grave and say, Spirit, take my words with thee. With Hecate's torches, let them see all that they meant to me. Let them for this night roam free. Let them commune with me until the witching hour is known. Let them return to their earthly home. So mote it be. We'll put these spells, we'll post them so you can print them out. And, you can always tweak any spell to make your own. Right, Kate?
Yes, I agree with you, Marie. Making it your own is really important. And then also you'll find things that work when you have, like you were saying, tweaking it, you may have a strong connection with the earth, and that really helps you figure out your own strengths and what your interests are when you make things your own. That's what really helped me in my practice. Taking what I needed from something, what I've learned in the past is there are some things that I resonate fully with, but then there's something I would read a whole book and I'm like, I only resonated with one chapter in that book. So making things your own and taking what you need is a really important part of your spiritual journey.
Right. It's the intention that you come to the table with and the pure love from your heart that makes it powerful. Some of the spells are tried and true, like through time, because certain words, phrases, and phonetics have power. They have frequencies. But if you are really feeling drawn to something else, then make it your own. Just do that. And also, if you find things that really work, share it with us. We would love to hear what works for you because our witchy community is very strong and filled with love and elevation of others.
For sure. I want to talk about October herbs and gems. Before we get into that, though, we are going to give a shout out to Ellen Everett Hopman, The Sacred Herbs of Samhain. So this is one of our most treasured magical herbal books. Hawthorn has historically been seen as the gateway between the human and spirit world. Plus, it's rumored to be the most likely place to see fairies. To honor this tree on Samhain, sit at its base and give thanks for its protection. The berries are typically ready to harvest around Samhain, so bring a small basket and harvest enough to make a tincture or jam. You can also dry the berries and sprinkle them into your winter tea blends, where they offer heart supportive benefits along with other things. But use caution, as these berries contain amygdalin, which can cause cyanide toxicity. So again, use caution, and you can even look up the specific berry and find out more healing properties and more details on that.
And, we do have to add a disclaimer here about the use of herbs. Anything that we say here on our podcast, and we'll mention this often, we have to say that it's for entertainment uses only. We're not medical doctors. We're not saying that these will help heal or cure anything. We have to say that. And I know you guys all understand why we need to say that. So that's that. And, here in Hawaii, we have so many hawthorn bushes. It's really cool. I believe that they're mostly Indian hawthorn. And on the mainland is where you'll find more like the hawthorn trees and bigger, there's just so cool that there's so many different varieties. And I just harvested some hawthorn berries here to use as embellishments in my candles that I sell on my website. Shameless plug time, kitchenwitchhawaii.com.
And those candles are gorgeous. I can't wait to smell.
Thank you.
So another herb is bay laurel. Bay laurel has a traditional connection to funerary and thus is particularly useful for working with grief or loss and helping us heal. Calamus, or sweet flag, is another one. Calamus is an herb that works specifically on the throat and helps us find our voices and share broadly in our community. Used for unblocking this part of ourselves and being able to find our voice and speak our truth. And the next one is cinnamon, one of my favorite herbs to work with. So cinnamon's a warming diaphoretic herb that functions as a circulatory stimulant, diaphoretic, and diuretic, among many other herbal actions. So cinnamon's really good at helping us clear out stuck things and removing stagnant thinking, emotions, and energy from our lives, as well as manifesting abundance. So like money spell. And then also I want to say that it was love spells because of the heat.
Mm-hmm.
The heat. So I want to say cinnamon was for love spells as well. The next herb is eastern white cedar. So any kind of cedar is excellent for purification, and it's all around is a good tree to work with. Even the fresh cut branches and needles will burn beautifully. The next, another favorite of mine, is mint. Mint's refreshing. It's a stimulating herb, and it's particularly good for work to clear out exhaustion, burnout, and fatigue, and feel refreshed and ready to move forward. I love my mint tea, particularly my mint chocolate tea. I just purchased. It's really good. But mint's really good to work with too around this time of year.
Okay, guys, I think this is probably a good place to sort of end this episode, and we'll continue next week with some more Halloween traditions and the rest of everything October.
If you have any questions or topics you would like to hear Marie and I discuss, please comment below, send us a message, or reach out to us on Instagram. We like to close each episode with a moment of mindfulness. Take a deep breath and think about what you're grateful for today. We're now going to bless everything that you're grateful for and let your higher self and guides know that you are open for even more blessings. We bid you farewell until we meet again. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. We hope your day is filled with love, happiness, undeniable signs, and mindful magic. You can check out Marie's handmade candles, soaps, lotions, and more at kitchenwitchhawaii.com, and you can follow her on Instagram. You can book an angel reading with me, check out my books, and sign up for our Angel Magic community at katewhitneyofficial.com. And be sure to follow Mindful Magic on YouTube at Mindful Magic Channel. We are also on Facebook and Instagram.